the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Freshmen who are coming in, the number one class in 2024. So Tennessee's going to reload, but they have a lot of options, and it's going to be a fun fall, winter, seeing how these positions shake out going into next year. But football season will be here before you know it. We're like 53 days away, give or take, for the start of the 2024 college football season, specifically for Tennessee, who will open on Saturday against UTC Chattanooga. Ryan, as we continue on our positions outlook spotlight series, next up, wide receiver. What do you like most about this room in 2024? How do you think it will evolve from the previous years here at Tennessee? Who do you think might be a good new face who comes on and pops in this room? And what is your biggest question mark for this position group going into next year?
Yeah, I'll start with the last one. I just think can someone step up and be the guy? I think Tennessee last year at receiver had a lot of good complementary pieces, but they didn't have a dude. They didn't have a guy. And to me, that's the question. Who is that? Is it? I think we've talked about it on here. I think Dante Thornton's probably the most likely guess, or if you made me guess one, that's who I would guess. Maybe it's Chris Brazell. Yeah, I don't really see it being any of the guys that played a big role last year. I don't think it's Brew, even if he wasn't coming off a gruesome injury. I don't think it's Squirrel in the slot with his size. So it feels like those two guys are the most likely, and Thornton would be the guy I would peg for it. But it's can somebody do that? Because I think that's it goes into what I like about the group is that there's a lot of good. I think there's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of guys who say that's a good player. That's a nice piece. Is there much great, to me, is the question with this group. And I think Dante Thornton is the guy that feels like the best bet. And I think, too, a guy that I'm excited about just seeing his growth. I don't think he just has superstar ability, but Squirrel White just in a more consistent passing offense. I mean, to me, he was the best receiver by a long shot last year, and he flashed and had some really nice games. And I think especially when you talk about Nico's ability to extend plays, which should be just a huge upgrade over what Tennessee had last year, I think that could be an area where Squirrel White can kind of shine, because in the times that Milton did do that last year, I think of Kentucky, I think of Alabama, the Squirrel had a couple really nice plays when things did break down and Milton was able to make throws on target.
I'm pretty optimistic, like you said, where it's just the amount of depth, the combination of the amount of options Tennessee's going to have, and then you throw in just what I think Nico is going to be. Nico is, like we've talked about in this program, I've talked about it for months, where I think something that people overlook when talking about Tennessee in 2024, you can't have one without the other. Part of what 2022 was for Tennessee was that Cedric Tillman was obviously a great safety blanket and became a go-to guy for Hendon Hooker. We also saw Jalen Hyatt break out and become a go-to guy and a trusted receiver for Hendon Hooker. You can't have the kind of explosive season in Heupel's offense and the quarterback play playing at a near Heisman level like Hooker did 2 years ago and Nico can this year without at least one of these receivers popping. Like, one of these receivers has to have a great year if Nico also has a great year. Nico cannot have a great Heisman type year if several of these receivers do not have great season, and it's going to work together. Like, I think Nico is going to make these guys better, and I think a lot of these guys have just been in the room for so long that they're just more comfortable. You look at just the continuity of the wide receiver room right now. Like, I get that Chris Brazzell coming in is a new figurehead, but that's about it. Like, you have the freshman and Mike Matthews, I think everyone's excited about, but he's not getting thrown to the fire. Like, you feel good about him and Braylon Staley next year, but Squirrel White's obviously been here for a while. Brew McCoy's obviously been here for a while, both 3 years, I think, for the two of them. And then you also have Kaleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod, who've been in the program for 3 years as well. Kaleb Webb might be my sneaky, like, if you were to tell me someone who's been on the current roster, he's got the Cedric Tillman type size. Like, I think I looked last year where their measurables are almost the same. When you look at Tillman and Kaleb Webb, like, if you were to tell me Kaleb Webb, he's gotten a lot of snaps. I think he actually has been like a Nico favorite in his starts and when they play together. I think there is, I think I saw on Full Disclosure, that program with Jimmy Himes and Paige, what is her last name?
Dower.
Yeah, like I think she had like a short I saw on YouTube the other day about like half of it. Nico's passes have been to maybe Squirrel and Kaleb. I forgot who it was, but Kaleb Webb was one of the two to this point. But I don't know. Like Kaleb Webb's obviously got some work with Nico last year with the twos. I wouldn't be surprised if Kaleb Webb was like the breakout internal guy because all eyes will be on Chris Brazel, Dante Thornton, Brew McCoy coming back, Squirrel in the slot. I don't know. Like, I think Kaleb Webb might, to me, be my favorite sneaky. He's the one that just kind of, because no one saw Cedric Tillman coming 3 years ago. That was not one that anyone saw, like, from the first game on with Cedric Tillman against Pitt. We were like, how many targets does he have? And then he just became this menace for Tennessee. It was obviously great in the Alabama game, but that 2021 year for Cedric Tillman came out of nowhere. And he was just electric and Tennessee's best receiver that year. So I don't know. I think it's very possible that one of these internal guys that people aren't thinking about, aren't talking about right now, is actually the one that breaks out with Nico this fall. It wouldn't surprise me.
Mark me down as surprised if Kaleb Webb has a breakout year. I just you're the Cedric Tillman one is a great point because I can see it from the similarities of not a bunch of speed with either of them, and similar builds, and certainly Cedric Tillman came in and run block the first 2 or 3 years of his career at Tennessee when he did play before that 21 season. So I guess that's a reason you say never, or a reason to believe that you should never say never. But I just don't really see it with Kaleb Webb. I'd almost be, of the guys you could possibly name besides Braylon Staley, he might be the one that would surprise me the most if he's the one that has the breakout year. But like I said, you never know. And yeah, no, you're kind of to the first part of what you're saying. You're right that you can't have one without the other. But to me, the question is just, are you going to have the one being Nico? I think Nico's going to be good. And I think he's going to be an upgrade over what Tennessee had last year. And I think he certainly is capable. And it wouldn't surprise me if he has that in the running for a Heisman type season, like you're talking about. But I also don't think that's any sort of given. And I think there's a middle ground where he could just be better than what they had last year and pretty good. And some of these receivers be good, but you're still feeling like maybe they're lacking a true elite guy. Now, someone still emerges in that scenario and has a good season, but it doesn't have to be, it's just like you said, it's going to go together. So if Nico's not elite, so somebody could not be, they don't necessarily, someone might not emerge as an elite option too at receiver.
That's fair. I'm pretty optimistic. I don't know. I'm feeling it's that July optimism for me.
I don't think you're crazy about it or anything. I see the path. I see the path more than I see it for Kaleb Webb next year. But I'm just still a little, that cautiousness of, we've seen him play one game.
Would you be surprised if Kaleb Webb's with the ones against UTC? Because I wouldn't. Like if you had Kaleb Webb,
I would be surprised.
Okay.
If Brew McCoy is healthy and available, I'd be surprised.
I think Kaleb Webb's going to play. I don't know. My gut tells me Kaleb Webb's probably the best outside come out of nowhere pick for Tennessee. He might, like, Brew McCoy is just such an unknown coming back from the kind of injury he had. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go right out of the gate. Does Tennessee take it extremely slow with Brew? Because I don't know. Like Tennessee just has options, and then you've never had this much freshman blue chip talent come in the room. Like we've never seen this kind of combination of the 5-star Mike Matthews on the outside and then Braylon Staley in the slot. Like Tennessee's had some talented dudes come in here. Nothing to the extent in terms of the pedigree and the expectations for Mike Matthews out of Georgia. So I don't know. Like where does Mike Matthews? He's the ultimate young wild card to me because like if he pops, is he so good that you just can't keep him off the field? Like it's kind of Boo Carter on the opposite side, where does Boo just make too many plays where you're like, look, he just got to be on the field. Like we don't want to play a true freshman, but he's got to play. Like there's just something different about him. And I think if you were to tell me two guys who show that they're just different and are going to be future stars right away at Tennessee, my two picks from this class coming in here would probably still be Boo Carter and Mike Matthews.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Peyton Lewis, I would consider too, but besides that, I don't think there's anybody else that just pops out as a clear option, and it would be different too. Whereas there's a world where Boone Carter has to do it out of somewhat, at least necessity, not true necessity, but Tennessee's other options just aren't very good. So it's like you might as well. He's talented, might as well throw him into fire, let him learn from his mistakes. I say that. That hasn't really been William Martinez's way in the secondary. But I say that, and then Mike Matthews, it's like there's tons of options, and there's tons of good options. So if Mike Matthews does force himself into being one of the guys for Tennessee this year, it's because he's really, really good right away. I think we all think he's going to be really, really good at the very least in time, but he's really, really good right away, and Tennessee's going to have something special at the receiver spot the next 3 years.
Yeah. Well, final thing here on the Vols men's hoops front, Ryan Schumpert, as we continue on our year-end analysis going into this offseason here. Zakai Zeigler finished up his third year in the Tennessee basketball program. What worked, what didn't for Zakai this past year, and one thing you would like to see him get better at going into his final year with Rick Barnes. And
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.